All right, let me share my screen once again. All right, so it's kind of a light time of year in terms of WordPress news and events. I have a couple of things at least to bring people's attention. So Page Builder Summit, for people who haven't attended this before, it's really quite a variety of topics. Even the name, I know it's related to page builders, but there are a lot of presentations there that are not specific to any one page builder. So it is in May, so May 20th to 24th, but you can go to the pagebuildersummit.com. I'll throw a link to the chat afterwards, so you don't have to write that down. But it's free to register. I believe you also get access to the presentations for at least a couple of days for free afterwards, and then afterwards it goes to like more of a paid tier. But definitely sign up. I'm sure you'll find a topic or two that are of interest. Again, even if you're not using the page builder, there's a lot of things in there related to technology, WordPress in general, and freelancers too. So that one's a good one, well worth checking out. Just another little quick piece of news. We talked about patterns a couple of meetups ago, I believe. I forget, it was like maybe 2 meetups ago or so. And I kind of happened to stumble upon this by chance, and I said, am I seeing things? And then I saw there's an actual news story about it as well. So the WordPress.org patterns directory has had a bit of a facelift, which it looks great, I think. So they've refreshed it. They made it simpler, I think, to read, to find patterns. The other neat thing too, I'll just show us real quick, is it's also utilizing that interactivity API, which we've talked about last month, I believe. So their interactivity API. Previously, the only real demo I had seen of it was that one they did for movies. It kind of looked like a IMDb thing, but now the patterns thing is using it as well. Just to show you this kind of real quick. Sorry, where's my? Where is my?
While you're calling that up, Ray. Yeah, WordPress. The homepage of WordPress.org was redesigned. So
I saw that too. Yeah,
redesigns are trickling in.
It's definitely, yeah, it looks a lot cleaner and everything. So the neat thing in terms of interactivity, if you haven't played around with this, you can see that a lot of these things are also just in terms of speed wise. This one I think is actually making calls back. But as you can see, it's using some of that underlying technology, I think, really to make it a faster experience. And just like I said, if you look at one of these, if you haven't gone here as well, the really nice thing is you can see what these things look like on different devices, etc. So a lot of goodness cleaning up of this really to make it a more helpful resource. So play around with it. I think that's something worth checking out. That's it really I have for news. A tool or tip or plugin spotlight. And if you got something for us, Peter.
Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to show. Let me share the screen. And let me call up the right. I was responding. I was inviting Bob to connect with us in the second half when we'll do a little bit of Q&A and all. So also an event is WordCamp Buffalo. I didn't want to forget that. But in terms of events, my tool tip are just these two sites that people may or may not be aware of. One is events.wordpress.org. And what's nice about this is most of the meetups, the sponsored meetups should be all here. And what's nice about this is then you can do some filtering here. Like, for example, how do I find the events that I go to? I'll come to events.wordpress.org. I'll go to format. I'll check the online events, apply that filter. The type meetup, WordCamp, other. I don't really need to filter that if I want to say, maybe I'm only looking in US and Canada just to make my searches a little bit easier. Apply that. And then from there, I can see, okay, here are, what's coming tomorrow and the next day on the online event. So events.wordpress.org is a nice, neat, easier way than doing a search on Meetup, which I've done. And the thing about searching for things on Meetup is it's regionally based. So like I often do a search from like Hartford, Connecticut, and then San Francisco, just to make sure that I'm kind of seeing what's happening, because again, with the online stuff and related to to this, and what's kind of when you go to events, you get this world map here. All right, so you can kind of see what's going on. You can zoom in on it. But related to that, and I forget the person who put this together, I'm not sure if his name is on, is the WP.world. And the WP.world is a really, he's been building it out. I'm not sure if his name is on the bottom here, Marcus Brunette. And he spends some time in some of the meetups. I mean, the live streams and things like that. But what's kind of neat about this is that you can join you can put your information here. We can go in here and kind of scroll into the area, and there's a lot more links. And let's look at Connecticut, and oh, there I am, right? South Windsor, Connecticut, if anyone wants to know where South Windsor, Connecticut is. And it's just a matter of getting in here. But what he's doing is adding more and more things to it, like he's building out an events list and all. So these are all different ways to kind of get an idea of the things that are going on. But part of the original goal with this was to say, okay, who's in your area, that you might, if you got somebody that's right down, and people have discovered and went out and had coffee because they've said, hey, you're the next town over, and we both do WordPress stuff. Let's have a mini meetup, that kind of thing. Who's in Glastonbury? Adam Tomasi's in Marlborough. So those are two neat little community tools: events.wordpress.org and the WP.world.
For that, so the WP.world, you said you obviously have to submit yourself to that, right? There was that form at the beginning. Did I miss?
Exactly. There's an add me. You put in information. You could put any amount of detail that you want. You can opt out. Somebody had asked, goes, I just don't, I want to be on the list, but I don't want to have my location. So you can opt out. And he does curate this, so it is pretty clean list. The submission, as far as I know, goes to Marcus, who goes in and says, yeah, I checked you out, and
you're legit.
To be real, like go to WordPress.org and looking for your WordPress .org account, which, by the way, if anyone hasn't done that, it's pretty neat. And there's definitely benefits for signing into WordPress.org, including the whole saving favorites and things like that. And then if you contribute, then you can have your whole profile and information there. But all of these are all part of that community building. We've got a few people on this call that I know are very involved in a lot of that. So
cool.
Keep talking about that good stuff.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So let's jump into tonight's presentation. And so like I mentioned earlier too, if you're here for the first time, all of our presentations, oops, let me minimize this. All our presentations, including tonight's, you can find at our Hartford WordPress site, this site that Peter generously hosts and maintains for us. So hartfordwp.com is the place you want to look for these. So let's take a look at, so tonight's topic, taking a closer look at calendar plugins. So kind of our agenda, we'll do some quick introductions of myself and Peter, who are we, then give a little bit of context, a little bit of background on what this tonight's topic, but also the idea behind kind of an ongoing series that might be a bit similar to what we're doing tonight. Then we'll dive into calendar plugins themselves, kind of what problems does this plugin solve? Again, this is something I think we want to talk about in this ongoing series, why you may want to use a plugin like this. And then I'm going to spend probably the bulk of at least the first, again, so we're trying to split this just the first hour and then an hour of Q&A and stuff. So I'm probably going to spend a bit of time on the events calendar, probably one of the more well-known calendar plugins. Peter's then going to talk about other alternatives because we don't want to just focus on one, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up. So real quick, oh, here I am. I'm Ray. I'm one of the co-organizers of Hartford WordPress. I've been involved in IT for 25 plus more years. As a software developer, software architect for some large companies. I've been using WordPress for around 7+ years. Have my own web design business, web development business, CT Web Geek. Married, no kids, live in Newington, Connecticut, and I am a geek. Peter.
Yeah, I'm Peter. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut. I've been working on the web for a long time, working in WordPress for quite a long time. I am self-employed. I'm married with 2 adult kids, and I consider myself a WordPress DIY advocate. Not so much a developer advocate, but hoping, being an advocate for those who kind of, doing it yourself, trying to figure it out. A lot of people are on this call. And I've listed IngersollWP.com as sort of a starting a link tree kind of thing and build out to a couple of things I'm doing. I have many sites that are not built out yet, but by being public about it, it's going to either force me to take them down or make them work.
Accountability, right? That's what you got. Cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, obviously tonight's topic is taking a closer look at calendar plugins, but I kind of want to give some context of, so again, peeking behind the curtain a little bit as Peter and I plan our meetup topics and such. As I always mention, we're looking for suggestions, but when we don't get them, we have to come up with things on our own. But so if you've attended a couple of our meetups over the past couple of years, Peter does a great job of doing that tools and plugin spotlight that he just did a few minutes ago. So there've been a lot of great plugins covered there. And often when we're doing a topic, we'll use a plugin to demonstrate, whatever we're doing the topic. But we haven't really had a chance to kind of focus on plugins entirely for, a series, like a deep dive series. So really the thought behind this is, again, this may be not every month, but just kind of an ongoing thing throughout the year. We're going to sprinkle these around. But it's really to take a closer look at some useful plugins that solve common problems. So again, the thought is maybe for you at this point in time, depending on your website or whatever, you may not encounter these problems, but sometimes it's good to just know about them because at some point in the future, you may hit something. You're like, hey, wait a minute, I remember there's a plugin for that. There's always a plugin for that. So again, this is really a supplement to some of the great tools and plugins that Peter's been spotlighting for the past months, but also we're trying to have them cover broad enough topics that they're useful for everybody. So, we're going to start with kind of common things, I think, over the next few of these deep dives. So things like, security plugins, caching plugins, SEO, user member management, etc. And we're always looking for more suggestions. Again, that's another one too. If you have a plugin that you use, your favorite plugin, or something that you have a problem on your site, like, gee, I wonder if there's a plugin that could help solve this. Let us know. Again, send it either through the chat, contact us through Meetup, the Facebook group, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're trying to do in this series, just like tonight, is when we look at a specific plugin, we're not doing an exhaustive review of them. We're not going to try to list all 50, 100 plugins that do something. We're not consumer reports. We're not doing side-by-side comparisons and stars and all that. But what we really want to do is show you free and paid plugins, and give you some helpful advice of when is it worth paying for something versus maybe you can cobble together a couple of free things and that'll work fine for you. But really the thought is to at least have a demo and focusing on one plugin, one primary plugin that demonstrates the general functionality of what all these other plugins can do. So again, it may not be the best one, even like tonight, the events calendar, I'll talk about why that one was picked, but it may not necessarily be the best for you, but it's one that at least showcases, I think, what a lot of these other plugins in that category all kind of do. So again, we're not doing a lot of slides. I'm sure everyone's happy about that. It's going to be focused more on demos and showing you the functionality of what the plugin can do for you. Peter, anything you want to add to that for context?
No, I think that's a lot of the types of meetups we go to. There is always interest in the plugins, and when you look at and I don't have it up in front of me, but what is it, 50, 60,000 plugins to go through, and then premium plugins to go through. And the question is always, what's the best? Well, while we're not necessarily answering what's the best here, like you said, Ray, we're definitely giving you some things to look at. And yeah, the ones we're showing there's a reason why we're showing them, and we'll talk for like the events calendar specifically about that. But hopefully it's the idea is to say, there's so much out there. Don't get lost. Let's take our experience and the experience of anyone else who joins us on the calls to kind of help you through making some of those decisions.
And that's a big part too, as you said, as we're doing tonight's topic too, we want to hear from you. Again, I'm not aware of all the other calendar plugins that are out there, et cetera. So if you have one that you use quite a bit, and if it does something different enough or has a feature that we don't know about, bring it up tonight. And we'd love to hear that and look at that too. So that's kind of, this is a sharing thing too. So we're bringing up the topic, but we definitely want to hear other people's opinions, even during the presentation as well. So let's talk a little bit, again, from a context standpoint of just setting some terms of, and we're talking specifically around plugins, like event calendar plugins. So why would you want to do this, or what's the purpose of this? Well, it's useful for showcasing either virtual or in-person events on your website. And to clarify, again, calendar is sort of a broad term. We're not talking tonight about appointment scheduling or booking calendars or plugins like that. That's something completely different. We may cover that another time. A lot of those tend to have also back-end systems that are outside of WordPress that you may need to interface with. So what we're really talking about for events are things like, if you're a nonprofit, fundraisers, or just meetings, even like a Meetup meeting, etc., conferences, paid events. I'll show an example of a site in a second. I think it's a great example of that for showcasing events. So, when you think about what do you want to capture for an event and display, basics, what's the title of the event, some description of it, then things like the date and time of the event, its location, perhaps a link to a map, Google Map or not, a price if it's not free. And as I said, like event details could be a lot of other things besides that. And again, one of the purposes of using a plugin is not just there's other ways you can do this. You could, and we'll talk about these other examples later, but these plugins in general are really allowing you to have structured data, and structured data is good for SEO. And I'll show an example of that in a second too. So the more things are laid out in a particular way that search engines recognize, aha, this is an event, the more useful that can be for people to discover you on search engines. So as I said too, we'll talk about other alternatives, and that's going to be, I think, a theme for some of these talks as well too. Even though we're talking about a plugin on your site, that may not be the one and only solution. Generally, you may need multiple solutions, including some that are off of WordPress. So but the key thing why we always go back to WordPress when we talk about some of these other solutions is you own your website. So they can't take that away from you unless you stop paying your bills for your hosting or something. But it's you have complete control over the data, the presentation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why showcasing them on your site is a good idea. So let me show, before I jump into the events calendar, let me just show a quick example of a website that does this. And she's a member of our group. I don't think she's been on our meetups in a while. And I reached out to her a while back, helping out with her site. But this is in Connecticut, a great website that I've actually seen on Facebook mentioned by a couple of people. It's called Kidtivity. So it's about finding activities for Connecticut kids and families. So she showcases, she and I think she has a business partner here as well. They showcase just different free or paid events around this area, and specifically targeted towards kids and families. So we'll look at the site a bit more later as we talk about the events calendar plugin. But just to give you an idea of, this is one example of really an entire website dedicated to events. You don't have to have an entire site dedicated. We'll show a little bit our example of adding events to an existing site. But just, this is really cool. Like if you look at, I believe you can subscribe to this as well too. So you can actually get an email version of when new events are added. But if you take a look at this, like she has events going out for the next weeks, next month, et cetera, and they're all really focused on, things that are family friendly. So what a great resource. And this is free. Again, just looking at it, at least going to the site is free. How many times I don't have any kids, but I would assume many people with children are like, what are we going to do this weekend? Or it's summer vacation or this or that, or you have the grandkids, like where can we go? Kidtivity.com. You can see a lot of things up in your area. So this is a great site, again, that's entirely showcasing events. To talk a little bit, before I go back to slides, about SEO. So one of the sites I maintain is for the local Chamber of Commerce here in town, and we have lots of events. We have ribbon cuttings, we have fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. But by saving the data in a structured format, what that allows, as I said, is, if you're close by, you're in Newington or whatever, if you search on Google to say, I know we have a car show thing coming up in June. So if you search for car show events, near Newington or near me, whatever, it's displaying not just, this is the one that I created for the Chamber of Commerce, and here's other local ones. But this little snippet here that's showing up in Google, that's because it's structured data. So Google knows, because of the way this data is saved, it's able to pull all this stuff together. So I'll show you in the events calendar plugin, like this is the featured image, this is the location data, et cetera, et cetera. So the more that data you can provide in a structured way, the more Google can recognize it as an event and then bring it up to people's attention when they're searching. So again, that's another benefit of using an events calendar plugin. So let's talk specifically around the events calendar. Oh, I'm sorry. So this is still more general. So again, why use a plugin for this? Can't you do it yourself? And I think Peter will talk about one example that's not really doing it yourself, but kind of a different way of doing this. So yeah, using a plugin, first off, you're using WordPress to add and modify events. So it's a more familiar UI. You're not learning a new system to do that. As I mentioned, structured data is great for both SEO, and you can also add additional fields to it as well. And the data is saved as a custom post type. So from a WordPress standpoint, it's handled just like a custom post type. You can do all the same sorts of things, archive pages, etc., categories, tags, those kind of things as you can with other custom post types. And also because it's inside of WordPress, you can do things like user role restrictions. I'll show an example of how to display and style things on your website. Again, you could use your theme style, you could override those, etc. You can also integrate with other applications. And then if you really need advanced functionality, many of these plugins do provide that as well. So going beyond just displaying events, if you need to do like ticketing for events, or if you want to capture RSVPs and do guest management to see who's RSVP'd, et cetera. A lot of these plugins do provide that functionality. Usually that's on the paid side. So again, you could code all of this yourself. That's the beauty about WordPress in general. Things are open source. You can, you could cobble it together yourself, but why? That's the great thing about plugins. Someone else has done it for you. And quite often, the free version and or the paid version, it's worth paying somebody just to save your time and have something that's truly tested and debugged, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why you'd want to consider using an events calendar plugin. But so the one I'm going to demo and showcase really is probably the most popular one, I think, at least the one I've worked with the most and seen all over the place. So this is the events calendar company. I don't know if they still call themselves Tribe. I think it was Tribe Events is the name of the company.
Yeah, no, they were, I think they're part of Stellar WP now, I think.
Yeah, so we're Liquid Web or somebody bought them.
Liquid Web, and then, yeah, exactly.
They've moved around a little bit. So they used to be Tribe. But anyway, they're the big one. If you search for events on in WordPress, this is the one that will pop up the most. They've been around probably one of the longest since 2009. Really large install base, lots of documentation, really well documented, big community around it. As I said, you can get the free version from WordPress.org. Very actively maintained, updates all the time. It's one of those, for better or worse. It's updating all the time. But that's good. It means it's always being tested out. New things are being added. There are free and paid add-on versions. I'll talk a little bit later in the demos about what you get from the paid versions. But the free version is one of those that, to be honest, for a lot of people, it's good enough. It's really great. And you're sort of shocked that it's free. I've also used it for several nonprofit clients, and they do offer nonprofit discounts, in some cases entirely free. You have to submit some tax documentation to them and all that. Or you may even just get just a percentage discount too. So that's another reason where I think it's pretty popular. They're very good about that.
Hey Ray, if I can jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So two main things. One is, if you've been around long enough, you might remember something called the all-in-one events calendar.
Yeah.
It's what we all used way back when. And the events calendar by Modern Tribe, which this is, and now is, definitely overshadowed that, and the all-in-one went away. It had it was kind of old code and all, but if anyone still has that, this is definitely kind of the upgrade within that kind of range. And the other thing about the events calendar, and you said right, you've got the free and paid add-ons, and you'll probably talk about this but also those add-ons are from any number of other companies and even private developers. It's a great example in WordPress where somebody makes something and then it's extensible. Other people can add even more functionality and more functionality.
Right. It's turned into an ecosystem like WooCommerce. WooCommerce, you have so many additional extensions to it. They're not even by the parent company. And you're right, just because it's so popular and the company itself can't do everything. So, and some of those extensions are free. And I may show one later of it basically does kind of what one of the paid ones does, but probably a lighter version of it. So just these I'll flash through real quick. So this is again, if you search on WordPress.org plugins, this is the one that shows up. Again, just updated 4 days ago. As I said, that's the nice thing. It is very actively maintained. Again, it's current with most versions of PHP and WordPress. And then the paid one is if you just search, on Google, theeventscalendar.com. They have different bundles, etc. If you just need a couple of additional features, you can buy them separately or get them as a bundle. And then I'll keep this page up because I may need to look at this later. And then just as I said, if you search for nonprofits, they do have a good nonprofit program. It's 25%. Oh, it used to be free. Maybe that's changed. It was, or maybe they've hidden that somewhere about the discount. But yeah, I've gotten it free for several nonprofits. And then I'll talk about this later. So these are some of the extensions. So they even have some free extensions too. This one for event tickets and registration. They do have a paid version of this too. So again, well, we'll dive into this a bit more. So let me set some context for the demo. So here's what I'm going to demo over the next, whatever, half hour-ish or so. So real simple. I probably won't spend a lot of time on installing. Most people I think know how to install a plugin and configure. I'll mention a couple of things that are worth noting for configuration. And then I'll create an event, just, spend a couple minutes on that. And then probably where things get a little bit more interesting is how to display those events. There's a few different ways. We can display them as their own page. There's something that comes built in, basically like an archive page with the events calendar. I'll show you what it looks like if you want to put them in the sidebar. And then on the home page, which several websites, let's say if you're displaying, below your news or blog post or something, maybe you have here's our current events. So I'll show you how to do that. Now I'll talk a little bit about advanced functionality. So I have another site that I'll show that has the pro version of Events Calendar. I'll show you some of the pro features that you may be interested in. Repeating events is definitely sometimes worth paying for. There's manual ways to do it. Again, time is money. Some integration things that the paid version gives you for integrating with Google Calendar and other backend systems, and then some enhanced Google Maps functionality. So I'll show more of that. I probably won't demo it entirely. All right, so we're gonna do a demo. Just always, I grabbed this from Peter. This is the standing reminder that hopefully everything you see will work on your site too. But again, your theme, your plugins, any custom code in your site, things may vary. So we're going to show these on, I'm going to show them on pretty vanilla WordPress sites, and I'll kind of talk about what's installed on these websites first. So let's start with, let me go back to this. I may need to refer back to when I'm demoing. Installing and configuring, like I said, pretty straightforward. And we're going to go back to, for folks who've been part of our series for a while, this one goes back a couple of years now, believe it or not. We haven't touched this. Our WP animal shelter has been sitting there languishing, hopefully getting pets adopted out there somewhere virtually. But this is something that we put together. If you go back to our YouTube series, we've added functionality to it, and I figure it's a great place to add some events to this. So we built this out as a contact page, et cetera, et cetera. So go watch those YouTube videos on how we built this. So what I'm going to do is, again, kind of just the use case around this is I'm going to install the events calendar. We're going to add a couple of events, related to an animal shelter, our mythical animal shelter here. And we're going to add a link to our menu that'll go to the events page. I'm going to add the events below our news. So I'll add the display of the events on our homepage underneath the news section. And then just to mix things up a little bit, I'll also display it like in a sidebar on one of our posts to show you kind of what that looks like. So 3 different ways to see the events. So let me go in the beginning here and let's talk about the plugin itself. As I said, it's hosted on the WordPress repository. So obviously, I assume everyone knows how to add a plugin. You go add new plugin. You would search for the events calendar. This is what it'll look like once it's installed. As I said, look for the one that probably the first one that pops up if you search for events, has the most install base, etc. So once you've installed it and activated it, let's review the settings a little bit and just kind of give you a quick walkthrough of what's involved in the back end. So again, this is the free version right now. The paid version looks a little bit different on the back end. There's some more functionality that pops up. But one thing to note, we'll look at this later, is the URL, the events URL slug. So by default, as I said, because these are saved, it's saving events as custom post types. And again, just like any posts have archives. So an archive page is where you'll see a complete listing of all your blog posts. Well, this is the URL that by default it'll use to display a complete listing of your events. And you don't have to create it. It's created by the events calendar plugin for you. You can style it and do other things to it, but it's nice right out of the box. For many people, this could be all you need. You don't have to, create a whole new page, do anything. You just use this URL. And again, you could change this if you don't like events. Let's say your thing is more I don't know, meetings or whatever. If you're more focused, you can change the name of this so the page URL will be something different. So that's kind of the first thing. We'll revisit this later when we show displays. The rest of this, let me see if there's anything interesting in here. No, most is debugging, nothing in there. The display, so out of the box, again, the free version already gives you 3 different ways to display your events. So you can display them as a list, a month view, or a day view, and I'll show you how those look differently. Also, by default, you can, it really has some pretty nice styling on it too. So you don't have to do a lot of work. I know sometimes a free plugin will just give you bare bones. This one, pretty much, in general, I leave it alone because I think the styling looks good. I mean, back to this Kidtivity one, this is pretty much the out-of-the-box styling in here. There's obviously the theme is probably doing a bit here, like in terms of the fonts and all that, but in terms of the overall page structure, this is probably the default template that's coming from the plugin. So that's a nice thing. You don't have to mess around too much with all that. But again, you can just use the skeleton bare bones and then do your own custom styling that you like. So here's just, again, I won't go through all these, but you can say how many events do I want to display. The default view, just my advice on this is if you don't have a lot of events, keep it as list. If you switch it to month, let's say you only do one every couple of months, it looks pretty bare bones, and people may think, boy, there's not a lot happening here. So just keep it as a list. That's just an easier view of it. Later, when I show you the pro version, the map view is really nice. So that's one we'll actually look at, maybe like Kidtivity. So the pro version gives you a lot of additional views, and she's using the pro version on that site. So we can always look at that afterwards. One other just tip is make sure that your time zone on your site is set properly. So this one, I believe, I did check this, Peter. I think ours is set to like New York time because we're on the East Coast. So that just makes sure that when you're saving events, or saving them in the proper time zone. Otherwise, you have to go in and change them every single time. Again, currency, a lot of the stuff you'll leave alone. And then if you're using the maps thing, this will just tell you how far you want it zoomed in and out. One really nice feature here too is it comes for free with the events calendar Google Maps API. It's limited, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, I've seen many other plugins where it's, again, they give you bare bones and you're on your own. You got to go set up all these additional things before the thing works. This one's really nice. So if you don't have a very high volume map calls, or you don't need anything really crazy, this may be all you need. You don't have to go set up a Google Maps API, although I'll show you later about why you may want to if you want to go with the pro version. So again, that's something great that it gives you right out of the box. And let me see if there's just anything else interesting. Filtered. We'll skip all these licenses, integrations, etc. Imports, just to call that real quick. So let's say that you're migrating from maybe another calendar plugin. The free version can import events as CSV files. So if you are, let's say, exporting from another plugin, they give you a template on their website. You'd have to go check out the events calendar page for the template. You can, with a little bit of work, using spreadsheets, you can copy data over, and then just import them in just to get started that way. So that's a quick way to get your events loaded without having to type them in manually. But we are going to type them in manually. So again, we're talking about Animal shelter. So let's add a new event here, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. So just to look at the sidebar here, there's really three main components of an event. There's the event itself, there's the venue, so kind of the location, and then there's the organizer. So in some cases, you may want to create these separately, and I'll give you an example of that a little bit later, but you'll see. Or you can create them all together as the event. So let's start off, just do something simple. We'll create a brand new event. And again, this is an animal shelter. So let's say this is cat adoption events. This would be where you put in the text. Oh, I should have used, I should have grabbed the Lorem Cats, whatever that thing is. Hold on, it's got some dummy text in here. I'm not as slick as having something built into my. There we go. Some Lorem, some stuff. And then here's where the fields that are specific to events. This is where the structured data really comes into play. So starting off, obviously an event, if it's any event, I should say, whether it's virtual or in person, you got to set a date for it. So let's say this one is starting on May 1st. You can make an all-day event, in which case it's, you can say multiple days, et cetera, or let's just say it's an event starting, so it's a cat adoption, so it's going to be from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. that day. 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And then so location. So if you've already added locations, they would show up in this drop-down list. Okay, so we have a fake one. Oh, we South Windsor High School. Maybe I added this one. But let me create a new one here. So create a venue. So in this case, it's going to be, what's a good place to adopt a pet? We can select Petco or something. Search spell Petco of, I'm picking on South Windsor for some reason. Petco of South Windsor. So you can put in an address here, I don't know, 15 Main Street or something. This is probably a bogus one. I probably should look up a real address. Give me 1 second here. Can I find Petco? South Windsor? There's one in Enfield, isn't there?
So Ray, while you're doing that, I'll make a comment. And this is a great example of the structured data, filling in the blanks. Over time, you're loading the venues, which you'll talk about. And yet at the same time, there's, for some folks, and I'll take a short time later on showing something where if you didn't want to do this for whatever reasons, and I've actually had clients who are like, we just want to copy and paste something in, and you're like, well, you may be losing something on it, but I understand why, because they're doing something very, very quickly where they're just doing a big copy and paste. So.
Right. No, I completely understand, and you're right. And this is one of those too that it's where this gets to be more of a hassle is the first time you do it. So let's say you're doing a lot of events at this location, this venue, then it's in that drop-down list. So you're pulling down, or if you're doing virtual ones, obviously you don't need a venue at all. You can just leave that off entirely. So I've poorly named it Petco South Windsor. It's actually in Manchester, but whatever, we'll get by. So the reason I put all that information in too, remember I mentioned that out of the box for free, you can use the events calendar Google Maps API. So we can say on the event detail, yes, I want to show a map, and yes, I want to show a map link. If you do that, obviously you need to make sure you have the correct address information in there. You can put other stuff in there. We'll skip that for here, like the phone number, website, etc. Organizers is one I haven't used too much. I haven't seen too many of my clients need it, but let's say that this is something that's put on by, I don't know, a Rotary Club or this or that, some organization that it's not yours. I think actually hers in this one makes a lot of sense. So this will say the organization is the Science Center, et cetera. So she's putting it on, but it's not the owner of the website isn't the organization that's doing the event. So you can imagine, yes, you can create that separately too. And then event URL. So let's say you do want to send them someplace off of your site. So let's say Petco had their own web page to do this, or maybe a Facebook page or something like that. You can put that in here as well. If it's a free event, you can just leave this blank, but if there is a cost to it, you can put the cost in here. This isn't going to automatically set up a payment thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but and then here, so I'm going to skip the allow comments. I'm going to skip all this. So by default, it's going to use the meta title and description. I think we have an SEO plugin here for it. And then just a couple other features. So categories. In this case, it's not a fundraiser. This is a, let's say, adoption event. Adoption events. So you could, again, because it's a post type, you can categorize these things. So later, if people want to filter, as I said here, event categories, you can see, show me the birthday event, show me the classes, show me the fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. That's how you would use these categories. So I'm just going to hit enter to add that as the category, and then say, yes, it's an adoption event. Let's say you want to make it stand out in the list. So make it sticky, so it stays in there, or it's a featured event. It's going to be scheduled, and then featured image too, because it's just a post. So let's see, it's what I say, a cat adoption. So who can resist that cat? Let's just use that. I think I'm missing my button down here. Sorry, the Zoom window is blocking me. There we go. Set featured image. So that's it right now in terms of the ad. So let's look at what this looks like, the single event right now. So if I right click, open it up here. Oops. Oh, I didn't do publish, sorry. That's why. Let's see, okay, so here's what this individual event looks like. So it has a featured image. Again, this is all the styling that came right out of the box, which is pretty nice. Again, you can mess around with this. You can change it here as well. So it's got featured image. It has the description. A real nice thing too, again, right out of the box, is add to calendar. So if somebody wants to add this to their personal Google Calendar, you just click on this. It also supports iCalendar, Outlook 365, Outlook Live, et cetera, et cetera. So, you don't have to worry about adding another plugin to do that. That's already there. I'll skip that. Let me refresh this again. I'll close that window. As I said, the dates in here, the time, the category. So just, if someone wanted to click on other adoption events, they could filter it this way. Google Map. Let's see if this works. The name might get messed up here, but as soon as I click on that, it should hopefully bring me to, there we go, at least to the right address. So somewhere in here, I think is where the Petco is, right near the weed store. That's great. So, and if you had other information, you could also display it here as well too. So that's the quickest way. I mean, that took me a couple of minutes because I was yammering on about it as I was doing it, but literally it just takes a couple of minutes to add an event like that. The other way, again, let's say if you wanted more control over things, is you could individually. So now that I've added a single event, if I look at organizers, what it did behind the scenes for me is it added that. Oh, I added this for another demo one, sorry. So I had an organizer for another test thing I did previously. So South Windsor High School, PTO. But that venue that I added, the South Windsor Petco, should be under venues. So here we go. So if I wanted to add additional information to the venue, let's say that's separate from the event, this could be where you'd want to add your venues first and then later add the event. So let's say I wanted to put something in here like parking on the side lawn, something like that, additional information here. One other thing too is on the pro version, it's not on the free one, I'll show this later, is on the pro version, you can connect this to your own Google Maps API. So you would set up a Google Maps API key. I found for one client, I was doing a bunch of locations for them. In some instances, it wasn't pinpointing the location precisely enough. It was something to do with the way they named the location. So I was able to, at the venue level, put in the actual longitude and latitude that way. So there's another, I'll show this later on the pro side. There's another set of fields here where you can basically override and say, this is the actual longitude and latitude, and that will bring you to the right place on Google Maps. So that could be another instance where you'd have to go in and edit the venue as opposed to just doing it through that menu screen. So again, similarly, let me just update this here. So similarly, the organizers, if you want to put information about the organizers, you could add additional details there, et cetera, et cetera. So the nice thing about this one is, as I said, you have probably the simplest way to add them is just through that events main screen, but you do have control. It's kind of breaking the data apart for you in a nice structured way behind the scenes. So now I won't do another one, but let's say if I added another event for that same venue, you'll see it's already in here. So there we go. So that Petco South Windsor is in here. So it's a little bit of that setup piece in the beginning that just takes a little bit of the time. That's the That's how you create an event, not that hard. Where things get a little bit more interesting is, okay, now I've got events, how do I display them? So let's go back to that use case I talked about for this animal shelter. So I've got that event. Actually, you know what, let me add a couple more of them, and I'm going to do it the lazy way. So, so we have one event here, and because these are custom post types, here's the other nice things. So we have another plugin installed on the site called duplicate pager post. I think we're using that one. So this cat adoption event, I'm very lazy. I'm just going to duplicate it. So there's another one I'm going to do, and I'm going to do another one here. Very lazy. These are all drafts, and I'm going to change these. So let's say one is the cat adoption event. One is the, let's say, the dog adoption event. This is the dog adoption event. It's going to be at the same place, but it's not the same day because that would be dangerous for cats and dogs. So let's say this is a week later on the 8th. And then the picture, that's not the cat, we want a dog. So let's change that real quick to one of these dogs. That's a nice dog. Is that your dog, Peter? That dog. So there we go. And everything else, this is fine. So it could still be all that stuff. Let's publish that. And I need one more. And this we'll call this one a fundraiser or something. So this one, let's go back to events. I just want 3 of these. So when I'm showing them, it's better than just looking at one.
Not my dog. One of my favorite breeds. My dog, who is no longer with us, was a mix with that's a Shiba Inu.
Okay.
FYI.
So let's say this is our animal shelter fundraiser. So this is our fundraiser, and this one is going to be, let's say this is a month out from now. So it's on this, and maybe it's later in the day. It's a 5 p.m. thing, whatever. So. And this one is, let's pick a different venue. Let's say this is at that high school. So, and this one's put on by that PTO. Let's just use them for some reason. And one more, just change the picture. So again, I'm just showing another super lazy way to create these events. Do we have a good mixed picture? Well, let's do a basket of cats. Why not? Let's set that as our featured image. And that looks, and this one's a fundraiser. So I'm going to change the category so we have a little bit of variety here and publish this. All right. So, excuse me. So we have 3 events. So the first thing is, as I said, behind the scenes, the events calendar has created an archive page for us. And here it is. Here's the URL. So let's see what this looks like. Close that up. So just by clicking on this, and I'll go to open in new tab. And if you recall, it's going to be by default, it's going to show it as the list view. So here we go. That's free. That just right out of the box, it created this view for us. So again, there's our 3 events sorted by, this makes sense, sorted by date. They haven't all be featured, but let's say one wasn't, it wouldn't have this little flag on it. And again, you can, for free, you can change let's say someone wants to see it as the month view, you click on the month view. So there's only one in April, I'm sorry, there's none in April. So there's the one in May, there's 2 in May. That's what I was kind of saying. If you have an organization where you don't have many events in the same month, you probably don't want to default to the month view. You probably want to keep it at the list view. People can also view it by a particular day. So the daily view is, I guess if you have a bunch per day, that'd be a good way to show it. But, list view probably makes the most sense to people. The other nice thing, the free version, as I said, by default, it has a built-in search. So let's say I just want to find things that are related to dogs. Oop, I gotta go. Sorry, let me go back to the page. I have the filters all on. Delete that again. Okay, so let's say I want to search for events that just have dog in them. There we go. So this search is really anything in the event description, I believe, and also just anything in the event data. So this is a way you can also search for, let me, I should have a refresh. Well, I'll show you the refresh page in a second, but this is another way just to search by location. So if you had something that was, these are all Manchesters, that wouldn't matter much. But let's say you had one in a different location. There's one. This is South Windsor. If I go South Windsor, that should just show me that one South Windsor. Oh no. Oh, because I misspelled Windsor. Yeah, because I had the filter on. But anyway, so that free searching is really just searching within that type. So that was great, right? So we have this built-in page, but now how do I get that to display on my site? Well, in this case, because it's an archive, let's say that we want to display it, as I mentioned earlier, we want to display that in our menu as a link. So really the simplest way to do this is I'm going to copy this link address, and back over here in WordPress, it's just, again, a menu item. If I go to Appearance, Menus, and I apologize, I didn't say it at the beginning. So for our WP Animal Shelter, we are using the Cadence theme still, I believe, right? We're using the free version of, yes, we're using the Cadence theme. So if you go back to that series of how we built the site, you can see some of our reasoning behind why we used Cadence. Again, this is the free version. So that's why the appearance, menus, and things are really specific to this theme. So you're back to that slide I said, the theme you're using, things may look a little bit different. So in Cadence still has the non-full site editor theme or enabled theme. So we still have a plain old menus option here. So we want to add this, let's say underneath news, I want to add something that says events. So because there isn't, it's just an archive page, I can just add it as a custom link. So I'm going to add that URL that we had, and link text is going to be obviously events. Add it to the menu, there it is, save my menu. And now, once it's saved, refresh the page, and it should be right next to, there we go. And this is obviously a little bit of spacing's messed up here because we did something with our donate page. But so anyway, on our site, now we have a way to get to this easily. It's always on the menu. So that's a real quick way to get a list view or get like a full view of all the events on a site. So what if you want it other places? So as I said before, we're going to add it to, so we have a page, that's what we just did, the page of all the events. I'll do the sidebar last, because that's probably, I'll show a couple of different examples of that. So let's talk about on the home page. So let's go back here again, back to this. So as I said, so now we're pretty good. We have events listed up here on the header, but now I want to list it below our news. And what I really want is kind of like the news. We have like, we're showing 3 events here. So I want to have, so we're showing 3 blog posts here. I want to add a new section to this page and show the 3 most current events. Well, that's where, unfortunately, the free part starts to fall apart a little bit. So the free version of the events calendar doesn't really have a great support for that. It doesn't have like great styling out of the box. But luckily, as we talked about earlier, there are additional plugins, free plugins, where you can extend the events calendar. And the one I've used the most, and I'll show you now, is the events calendar shortcode and block. So this is also on the WordPress repository. It also has a decent number of active installations. And it's good. It basically does, it also has a paid version too, but the free version does kind of what you need it to do. It allows it, interacts with the events calendar data and allows you to display that data anywhere on your site as a shortcode. As I said, the paid version of events calendar also includes that, but maybe if that's the only thing you need, why would you pay for, why would you pay for the pro version? You can just install this pretty lightweight plugin. So on our site, let me see, I think we have it installed, but I don't think I activated it yet. So again, you would add it just like you would a normal plugin. You would then, it's called the events calendar shortcode and block. I'm going to activate it. It's also actively maintained. They do updates to this. So again, this one I've used for quite a bit too. As you can see, there's a couple of different ways you can, so now that we've installed and activated it, you can use the old shortcode method of basically copying within the brackets. There's a whole guide to how you can set this up and add as a shortcode. Or they've also added like a widget slash, I don't know if it's really a block. They've added a widget to do this as well too, just to make things a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our home page. And we're going to, so what we want to do is we want to display the 3 most current events. So there's our front page. So we edit this. So I got to keep moving this Zoom window around so I can see. And again, so this is what we created in the past, and I want to put it down below the news section, but before, yeah, I guess at the very bottom here. So this row is the news row. And again, because I'm lazy, I'm just going to duplicate this row. Duplicate the row, and instead of our headline that says news, we're going to say events. And underneath the row layout, instead of this, so this is the cadence block that has posts. We want to remove that. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, oops, I got to bring it back because it's showing the cadence ones. So back here. So above the button, I want to add, oops. It's not showing all of the blocks. That's, do you know why it does this sometimes, Peter? Like when I'm searching, it's like lost context that I'm in. I'll go back. Hold on. Let me just update this page.
It does sometimes happen. So, one thing that does happen sometimes in the editor is because so much is happening in the browser.
Yeah.
Things literally like break or disappear.
So I'm going back in it. I'm lazy, so I just saved it, and I just have to go back into this page. So if people didn't know, the problem I was having was it was only showing me the cadence blocks. It wasn't showing me like the WordPress core blocks or any of them. So let's go back. So I've got this thing. This is events. I would add it in this section. So now it's still just showing cadence blocks.
That's strange.
I had this happen before too. I'm going to do it as, it might work if I add it in here instead.
Yeah,
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. And then I'll drag it back in. So the events calendar block, this is the one that plugin, the shortcode plugin added. It's this weird little picture of the guy with the face here. So let me drag this back to where this is where I wanted it to be. And as you can see, even though it's a shortcode, you could add it as a shortcode with all the brackets and all that kind of stuff. If you don't want to mess around with shortcodes, you can just use this. So, number of events that I just want 3 to display. I want them to display in ascending order. Excuse me. I want to display. I want the thumbnail image. Just leave it by default, I believe. I think it defaults to a size. Venue information. Yeah, sure. Show the venue information. And an excerpt is fine. And we can change this too. So for right now, let me just update this to see what this looks like.
And again, this is a great example of a plugin being made to support a plugin that might actually give you some of the features that you might find, say, in the premium version, for example. That's what's so great about open source development.
So here. So it did what I asked, and this is so it did add the 3 events, and this is really what I want, right? So I want the event title, I want the picture, and I want the a short description of it, and then here's the date and time of it. So again, this is the free version of the plugin. So at this point, many people may say, "This looks awful. Let me just pay for the pro version." You could certainly do that. Or if you know a little bit of CSS, again, I've used this one quite a bit on other sites. So, and I'm happy to share this with folks who do want to use this, or it'll be on our site too. You guys just right-click, inspect, and get this. So if I want to style this to look a little bit better than this, like I want this to actually look more like this. A real quick way to do that is I'm going to throw it in this custom CSS that I've copied over. So first, for our site to put in CSS, I'm going to add it to additional CSS. Yeah. And sorry, it's still loading the page. I think also maybe because I'm running Zoom, I think there we go. Our page is loading a little slow on my computer. So again, what I want to, I'm not going to go through all this CSS, but it's basically what it's doing is it took, you can see it already happened.
Yeah.
It restyled everything. So it made it display instead of like columns, made it display as a row. It rounded the corners. It centered text. It just did a bunch of nice styling things. It moved the time below, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the paid version would do this as well. But if you know a little bit of CSS, or if you want to, again, you want this CSS, feel free to grab it off our site, or reach out to me. I can give it to you. But so that has done. Let me publish this now and save it. So that's taken that additional plugin, styled the output results, and now we have it on our homepage. So we have it in 2 different places, and I'll show one more place too. So now let me get out of here. So we have our full list of events, and then this button, let me fix that real quick too. So I want this other button, let me copy that link address. Instead of saying view all news, I want that to say view all events. Events. Oops. Grammarly, get off Grammarly, turn off. And I want that going to, oops, once again, so that means you click to edit that. I'm going to delete that. I want it to go to there. Okay, let me update this. So we should be done now with the home page once this updates.
Ray, I might have missed it, but did you explain that the events page is the default?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it's in the settings. So
it's important for new folks, because I know when I first started, it got a little confused. Like, I want to go put it somewhere, and it's like the page is an automatic.
It's an archive page, so it gives you an archive page, but you don't necessarily need to use it. You can also display the events yourself, like that, like this page itself. You could create your own version of this, but why? This one's already free for you out of the box. So the last thing I did here, just to, excuse me, round off the homepage. So now we're displaying the events on our homepage, and we've added a button that, if you want to view more, you click on this, and it brings you to that archive page. So final, this will be another quick one, is let's say I want to also display my events. Maybe I want to display them on my blog posts. So I want to display them in a sidebar somewhere. I love the picture. That's a great picture. So first off, 2 things. So I need to first off have a sidebar, and then I need to display the list of events in that sidebar. So this is actually, it's kind of weird. The events calendar, the paid one, has a widget for this. So there's 2 ways you can do this. I'll just show you the quickest one, which is the one that comes with the events calendar. So back to our dashboard here. Again, for people who aren't familiar, your sidebar generally is just, that's one section of your page where you can put different types of widgets on. So in this case, if we go to our appearance widgets, we'll look at sidebar number 1 just to make it kind of easy. So our sidebar, which we're not displaying anywhere by default, has it's more blog post related things. So it's loading. It has a search box. It has recent posts. So let's get rid of these just to make it look a little bit cleaner. We'll get rid of that legacy widget as well. So I'm going to add a widget in here first, and see now it shows pretty. So if I search for events list, this one comes free with the events calendar. The other one is, I can also use that shortcode, the one I just showed you for the home page, but then I'd have to style it again. So I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. The one that comes with the events calendar is actually pretty good. So it's going to give us a little list of events. We can call it upcoming events. That's fine. I'll keep that title. How many do we want to show? We'll keep it on 5. We only have 3. Again, you can do a little bit of filtering on it if you just want the feature ones, etc. But let's stick with the defaults right now. Update that. So we've added it to the sidebar, but on our site right now, we're not displaying a sidebar by default. So let's just look at how we would turn that on. So if I go to the advice on adopting cats. Again, this is the Cadence theme. So your theme, how you add a sidebar could differ a little bit. So for Cadence, we can set the template for posts. So for single post, let's say we want to, by default, we're not displaying any sidebar, but let's say we want to display a sidebar on the right. So once we do that, I'm not going to save this because this will affect our entire site. But there you can see for free, the events calendar plugin. It's not bad. You know, you probably may want a little bit more styling. Again, the pro version gives you all this additional stuff you could do. But if you just want to display a list on, let's say, your blog, on the sidebar of your blog, this is pretty good. You know, so again, that's the third way to kind of display them. So we display it on the home page, we display the full archive list, and then we displayed it in a sidebar. You can also do it in a footer. You know, once it's a widget, you can display anywhere on a site that you could think of. So that's the free version of Events Calendar. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the Pro, but did anything pop up, Peter, in questions or anything in the chat while I was showing that?
No, there weren't any about.
Let me cancel that, so I don't want to save that, mess up our nice layout there. So what do you get from the Pro version? Well, here, according to their site, I think this maybe, let me just show this real quick. They probably have a ton more information here. So here's the Pro. They probably have checklists. So you get premium support. Yeah, you get custom fields. But probably the important things, recurring events. So let's say you do have a meeting or something that happens once a month or once every week, et cetera, et cetera. In the free version, you'd have to duplicate that over and over again. Again, if you're cheap or whatever, you can just use a duplicate plugin, but after a while, it's going to be quite a hassle. There's a lot of additional features you can get in the Pro version. One of the nice things is these different views. So, you know, actually, instead of reading their brochure of what you get, let me just show you back to the Kidtivity thing. So these filters, you get that with the Pro version. Location search, you get that with the Pro version. The map view, so this is really nice too for her site. If I want to see everything near me in sort of, you know, as pins on a map, you need the Pro version. You get the point. So eventually you may want to break down and get the Pro version. And also, I won't go into a lot of detail of all the features of it, but this is another site I have where I do have the Pro version loaded. So let me show real quick the settings. You get a couple more settings options in the Pro version. What was the one thing you get? So you get the map I talked about. So yeah, if you go back to displays, now you get all these things you can enable. So I can get the month view, the day view, the summary. The photo view is kind of neat. I think she uses it on her site here. So if I want to see things by photo, it shows it kind of as almost a gallery grid. So that's kind of neat, you know, for your visitors. So all these different filter options, that's part of that Pro view. As I said, the map thing in here. So one thing is when you're using the maps, now you actually do have to create your own Google Maps API. So I won't show you how to do that. It's its own separate topic. So that's a little complicated to get set up. They do give you instructions, but if you've never done it before, you know, you may have to try a couple times to make sure it all works, because Google Maps is a little scary in the sense of when you first set it up, it's like asking you for your credit card. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. I just want to use something free, which in general, you won't get charged unless you go beyond some limit. So, but once you start using, as I said, the maps view, that you can no longer use the events calendar free Maps API. Couple other, let me look at what I had. So that maps, so repeating events, let me show you what that looks like. So if I have a series, so what it adds is this idea of a series. So if I look at one of these events, this is a completely different, this is nothing to do with animals. This one's for, I think this is a food bank thing. So they had an event that occurs every week. So if I go and edit this. So this thing's every 2 weeks on Mondays until the end of time. So again, I didn't want to create that as duplicate things. So the Pro one allows you to create this recurring event. So it's recur weekly, monthly. You have a lot of flexibilities, every 2 weeks, every Thursday, et cetera, et cetera. You can really get very specific on that. So once you've added a recurring event, it now has saved that as a series. So there's a new thing that pops up on your sidebar here called series. So now these are the recurring ones. And if I look at that, what's neat about this though is you can actually adjust you don't have to touch all of the events in a series. Let's say one of these, you want to cancel that, or you want to convert it to a single because there's something different about that one. It allows you to make modifications without breaking apart and ending the entire recurring events. That's kind of neat. You get the best of both worlds. You get the recurring, but you also get some individual ability to modify things. One of the other things, so that was repeating integration with Google Calendar. This one, this one works. I had some issues with it, which is probably a longer story, but one of their paid plugins is I think I closed it, is the events aggregator. So that plugin, it's part of that bundle of Pro ones. You don't have to buy it with a Pro, but if you need it for things, what this allows you to do is actually pull in events from another source. So in this case, I had to pull in events from a Google Calendar that was already created. This was, there were hundreds of these events there, so we didn't want to just import them one time as a CSV. So you can pull it in one time, or you can have it set up so that this thing runs every day, every couple hours or so, and that's its own set of complications in terms of cron jobs, and I won't get into that. But anyway, the way this thing was set up is, in theory, it was something that was going to read from an existing Google Calendar. So why would you want to do this? Let's say that you don't have access to the Google Calendar. You're not the owner of it, but you want to display the events. More likely, you don't want people to learn how to use WordPress. Let them use the Google Calendar and continue to add them that way, or they've created them for a year and they don't want to go type them all in again. So this was a way to import them. So there's different sources you can import from. You can import from Google Calendar. You can import from even Meetup calendars, Eventbrite calendars, etc. There's quite a few. This one I happen to just use the Google Calendar. And then once it runs, the nice thing is, since I had the schedule to run all the time, or on demand, it'll show you, did it run successfully, did it fail, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a nice pro feature where you may have this kind of use case, you may not, but just this idea of importing things. And kind of final, so Google Maps to talk about that. The final thing on Pro is connection to ticketing and all that stuff. So as I said, that's kind of going beyond just displaying events, but let's say that you wanted to actually charge for your events. Well, actually you have two options for that. Or let's say you want RSVP. The free version of the free version of Events Calendar does not include anything for doing RSVPs. They do have an additional plugin. To be honest, I haven't played around with it too much, called the Events Tickets and Registration plugin. My understanding is this is a free add-on that will at least integrate with PayPal. I haven't used it too much. I don't know, Peter, if you ever used this one or not.
I haven't used that one, no.
Yeah, so I kind of learned about this as I was doing some research for this talk. What I tend to do is, again, kind of simpler way is on this site, we already have a forms plugin. So we have WP Forms on here. So let me just go back to this. So let's say for that cat fundraiser, we wanted to have a sign up. We want to display the event, but we also want people to RSVP. My lazy solution would be, so we have a form on here. I'll just pick one of our forms. Let's say the volunteer sign up form. I'm going to copy this, copy that short code. So back on our event, our volunteer event, where was that? That was, let's say it's the fundraiser or whatever. Because these are just regular posts, you can do anything. You can do with anything with a regular post. So in here, I'm going to add our short code. And then if I update this again, saving, thanks. There we go. Now if I view this event, I'll have a form on the bottom. Here we go. Yep. So you can, just like, again, so you can have a form on here too that, let's say, connects to Stripe or PayPal. So you don't need the pro version of the events calendar if you already, let's say, have a pro version of Gravity Forms or Fluent Forms or something else like that. All these things can work together because in the end, it's just a post. It's just a custom post type. I think that's all I have, Peter, I think right now for the demo. I'm sorry if
and that part there is a great example of something that maybe, I like to return to all the time. There are so many different ways of doing something, and having that capability says, you know what, I already have a way of selling something. maybe you're selling tickets through WooCommerce or through a forum that's tied to a payment gateway. Some of them are free. I'm not 100% sure if it's because of which payment places they go through, and maybe there's some arrangement there, and others cost money because you have a payment gateway that works differently. PayPal has its ways of doing it. So sometimes there's a more elegant way. Sometimes that elegant way might be a pro model, but you can also be very elegant, but you have to know kind of how the pieces fit together, or and what you could swap out. And it can admittedly get confusing, but when you get to a point where you start thinking about the pieces of things that are working together, and you go, I presented an event, and now, that's a brilliant example of, and now I just want to, this is the one event that I have where I'm taking a payment or a donation or something
Right.
like that, and I have a form
So
that's
why pay for the pro if it's just
right.
I rarely use it? My other thing too is back to our Swiss Army. I always have a hesitation of like, or some sort of instinct when I see something that's a Swiss Army knife of, oh, I do this and I do that and do that. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'd rather have something that's more focused. So like the
Right.
events calendar, focus on the events, do that.
Right.
For reservations, like that example of adding Fluent forms, I do that quite often, that kind of solution, because I want my Fluent forms not only to be an RSVP for the event. I want, after you submit the form, I want some validation of the form. I want a reCAPTCHA on there. I want to then save that form information to a Google sheet. I want an email to go, what I'm saying? That's what a form system does. That's not a calendar system. That, those should be two separate things. So try to keep them separate.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, I ran a little bit long there, Peter. So
No. And I can be very quick about things, but I want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to ask questions before we show anything else, and that could be related directly to calendaring, maybe something I've got in my back pocket and you've got there's a different way of approaching of doing something, or if you have a question. Real quick, Bob had mentioned earlier he had a question about querying, which we can go into, except for Ray and I have tried to do a little bit of pre-planning, and our next meetup, for once you get a preview, we're going to focus on the query loop and how you can use that in different ways. Ray actually touched upon it a little bit with the ways the archives and stuff work. So Bob, if you had something you wanted to bring up right away, or something you want to let us know that maybe we cover in greater detail. But I know we're going to cover some of the query stuff next
month. Yeah.
That would be great next month. And I attended the hour before this meeting. Wes Theron had a nice 1 hour visit with static versus blog pages. But actually, I do have a more pressing question, and I can, if you want to do other calendar questions, I can hold it. But I do have a question relating to domains and subdomains and some things.
Why don't let's hold yours. Peter, can you go through yours, you think?
I'll go through real quick, and Bob, I'll come back to you if there's any more questions. Certainly. Let me, now that I moved a bunch of windows around, let me go to this here, and we can go into examples. Let's or not. Let's keep it a little bit lively here. Share this screen, share, and do you see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So Ray already showed a few things about the events calendar and extending it. And there are several, when I say several, lots free and paid plugins. One small example that I've used, and I brought it up because Ray you hadn't seen this, right? The events calendar category colors, which is a free plugin on the repository. It's a little 9 months, but it's pretty basic. But what's nice about this is if you have here's an events calendar. Instead of spending time loading more events onto the build, this is this little sandbox area. Some of it is actually pulled from our pet shelter site. But I've got 3 little events just here that I've put on this. This is Adopt a Pet Day, and it is the event category is an adoption event, and the other 2 are training events. Well, I've worked with clients that sometimes need where you have so many events. And it's like, well, I want to filter them better. I want to see them better. I want to, and so this little, and not that it's kind of ironic because I'm so involved with accessibility, and you don't want to have color be the only way that you figure things, but there is an option here where when you look at it, colors, but you can also select to filter things. So I'll just go open the dashboard. I've already got the plugin loaded. It's not active yet. So let me go to the plugins. Here, and I'm going to go to, this is my sandbox. So there's lots and lots of stuff that's turned off here. And under the events calendar, category colors, I've already installed it. I'm activating it. And now one of the first things it does, and I've already put in some colors, but now when you go to events, Ray, where you were in the settings, now what this plugin does is it adds a new tab up here called category colors. And then when you go to category colors, you click on that, and then you see each one of your categories, and then you can add a border color. I pre-did this. And you can add, so like the adoption events are green, and for anybody who's colorblind, Ray, I think you are. Yeah, I'm curious what these look like to you. The training in this case is blue. So now that this is active, when I go back to my events and I refresh this, now on the calendar, and this is the month view, and we could even see on the list view, but you also have a way of linking up here where you say, okay, just show me the training events. That's this little filter tab kind of pops up, and now I'm only seeing the training. This was really handy because there was a client I was working with that they had internal meetings, but they were still posting them because people were in different locations. They had member is an association and member places that had their events. They had fundraising events. They had healthcare events and inoculations and things like that. And so the calendar got kind of full, and by color coding them and allowing this kind of filtering, it was a way for people to kind of say, well, show me what pertains to me. So that's just a little add-on, pretty cool. I don't remember if it color codes it does. So if we're looking at the list, it's also color coding here, although I don't see the key here. But anyway, one of those neat little things. If the next thing to talk about that I've been using is something called Pie Calendar. I mentioned this briefly on a tools and tips. Excuse me. And Pie Calendar is really cool because basically what it does is it allows you to put on a calendar or list as the calendar, like you can do a list, what's going on this month, whatever. But any kind of post page, custom post type can be put on a calendar. And what's nice is the event post can also appear in post lists, the archives, the news, here my blog posts, that type of thing. So instead of it being a completely separate thing, and where you put in, here's our news and here's our events, you can mix and match them because ultimately they're all posts, which is kind of neat. The layout, because it's just a post, when you're laying out like your content, you could do anything you want. You can lay out the page. Now, what you don't have the advantage of is that structured data and all of the benefits that go with it, and kind of pre-formatting and where things land on the page. The flip side is if and I have clients they want to be very designy, for lack of a better word, on some of their pages at an event. They want to put galleries, and which are all valid things to do. And something like this, where you're creating a post and then making that post land on the calendar, is a kind of handy way to go. You have that ability to show it a month list, that those kinds of choices, and then those layouts can be filtered by categories, and it's all short code driven. If I go to this link here, you can see this is the Pi Calendar page. They do have a premium version, which only adds a few options, like the repeating things, having a little bit control over what's happening in a custom post type. They went for simplicity. There's no settings for Pi Cal. It's all done through short codes. The styling all takes on whatever you've themed your, whatever is in your theme, and what you've changed in your theme for headings and things like that. It adopts all of those types of things. But this is where when you get into a level of what are you showing on the screen. So giving you a very, very quick example, if I go back to posts here. So now I'm still in my sandbox site. Let me look at my my published posts. I have an example here where I've added this. Here's some of our previously seen, but I have some of these other posts. I can add another one if it helps, but let me just show you what I've got here, which is, it is a post. I'm using the block editor. It's a paragraph. I put in a Google Map block, right? So we have a block for putting Google Maps where you put in the address so you can drop in the map. I put a gallery block where I brought in some images. I do have on the post, I do have a featured image excerpt and all. But when you're looking at on that post level, what this plugin has added is this calendar section. Let me close these. So this little calendar area where you would normally, you have categories, tags, featured image. Now you have calendar. And the first thing is, do you want to show this post on a calendar? I checked yes. And then it's like, is it an all-day event? Or give me a start date and time. Give me an end date and time. When you give it those parameters, now what you've got is, and I have to just remember what page it is. If I go over to pages, I have a sample page called Pi Calendar. Let me show you what's on this page. On the back end, it's nothing more right now than a piece of short code. I can certainly surround it, put a better heading, summary, images. Again, you're just controlling it. But now if I view this page, that short code is now bringing in a calendar. And on that calendar, that spring craft event is now on a calendar, visible as a calendar. And then that post, I can go straight to the post. And here's what I created in that post. What I just showed you, my featured image, my AI generated featured image. That map block, that gallery block, it's just a post with the benefit of, because of the Pi Calendar plugin, being able to be shown on a calendar. You can show it as a list, if you've got again, depending on if you've got a lot of events, and here's your weekly time grid, very similar to a lot of the options you have. I think you have a few more options here that on the events calendar are sort of premium kinds of things. But it's a neat way, and you can load up, and you can add categories. You can filter your calendars that you show by category. So I'm liking it for a lot of reasons. And one of the first reasons why I looked into it, I mentioned earlier, was having some folks who were like, they just wanted to create a page with the content, or literally in a lot of cases, they were copying and pasting something from somewhere else, and they wanted to put no work into putting things into boxes. This allowed them to do that by being able to create a page and then simply pop that page on the calendar. So that's Pi Calendar. Let me know if there's any questions on this particular plugin. No, okay. Another option is Google Calendar, right? So you lose a whole lot if you just embed a calendar, except for if you're already managing a calendar somewhere else and you don't need all of those things and you just want to show something in the calendar. Embedding a calendar is not the worst way to go. Now, there are plugins that help you connect to the calendar and also bring things in and allow you to have better formatting of the calendar and all. And one of the ones Pretty Google Calendar, I tried to make work. I just couldn't, honestly, I don't know what I was doing wrong. I wasn't getting the API. I was using it with a not my main Google account, and something wasn't working. So I can't quite show you Google Pretty Calendar, other than the fact that the concept behind it is pretty straightforward. It's taking a Google Calendar and dropping it on a WordPress poster page. But the one that I did that was really easy to set up is ICS Calendar. ICS Calendar is not only can you add Google Calendars, but you can actually add any kind of calendar that uses that ICS feed, that format. So Google, Microsoft Office, and so on, VRBO, Airbnb, and many more. That it's a standard format language for calendar events. So using that plugin, let me go back here to my dashboard. And I have the ICS calendar. I've got right now the plugin already active. Basically, all you need to do is put in your feed in a short code. What's kind of interesting about the ICS feed plugin is they allow you to test something, and in fact, they even have an external site that will build the whole short code for you. The short code that I'm using here is under my ICS calendar page. Let me edit that. Plugins active. There are no settings other than what you're sending over in the short code, kind of like PyCalendar. This short code was generated by their website. I could show you that a little bit if anyone's interested. But basically, it's ICS Calendar is short code, and then here's my calendar feed, and then the view was set to month. You could set to different views, and you could put other parameters. And now what this is basically going out, getting a Google Calendar. This is a different calendar I have with some accessibility events on it, and then in that Google Calendar, I'm linking to the actual event. So this allows me to kind of quickly build a calendar in Google Calendars. And then if I want to look at, here's a number of events that are on my Google Calendar that are now showing up here. The other way of doing it in a straight embed is under my, it's easier to sort by date here, and just go to an embedded Google Calendar. If I look at this is the classic. You have a Google Calendar, you go to the share, you get the iframe code. So when you look at that, now you see the calendar in the iframe embedded. Here's what Google is sending as a Google Calendar, which of course is a different kind of formatting. You might like this better. Just this is
one, the warning of this is these are not responsive.
That's right.
These are terrible on mobile. So yeah, that was, I don't know about this one. This one might be, I wonder how this one looks on mobile. The Google embedded one, that was kind of the problem. Like,
yeah, did you see it?
That looks good. Yeah,
it's definitely responsive.
That was really good. Yeah.
So I like this ICS calendar. If you just have a Google Calendar, you want to make it work. You don't want to deal with, let's see.
And Bob had mentioned using Simple Calendar with Google Calendar. I've never used
I do have that on my list too. Yeah. I think it's, I didn't put here. You know what, Bob? The only reason I didn't put Simple Calendar, and I had it, was some of the negative reviews made me just a little, and I hadn't used it. And you're always going to find some negative reviews, but I always go to look at what they're actually saying and when they said it. But apparently there was a number of people who complained that there was some pretty dicey code, at least at one point in it. So, but great example. There's a lot of different plugins for these types of things. But I found, after struggling over trying to get the combination of the API and the correct calendar feed from Google Calendar for the Pretty Google Calendar plugin, the ICS calendar was just like that one set up in like 5-10 minutes. When I just had to you basically get your feed. They have the tool to test it, so yeah, this will work, and then they have their little builder that helps you. Yeah, you can even preview it on their site, which is pretty cool. Where you go to their site, you can put your feed in, and then you can look at the options on what it would look like. So I like their website as being an interactive way to test things. So I think the only other thing I was going to mention was, yeah, again, you know, when we're talking about calendaring, that enters into a whole different, not a different category, but an expansive category. Some of the plugins use external services like Timely, and there's a few others where you're doing the calendar completely on a software as a service external website, and then you're just kind of linking to it, kind of like what you do with Google Calendar. But there's, you know, related plugins, including event ticketing, time booking. I'm using Amelia because I got a lifetime deal years ago, which allows me to have a calendar where people can book time, things like that. And I didn't want to forget another one that is more like a custom post type, add calendar events, not like Pi Calendar where it's a post where you're taking that post, putting on a calendar. But My Calendar is another plugin, and it's made by Joe Dolson, who is very involved in the accessibility part of WordPress. And he built he has a few plugins, and this plugin is a calendar plugin, enter events like a custom post type, but it is accessible both on the front end and the back end, which can be a little, we're often thinking about accessibility from the user's perspective. The user can also be an editor, can also be an author, and, you know, having tools like My Calendar for folks who are really paying attention to accessibility is valuable too. So lots of options.
And the other ones, again, these are the obvious ones, but as I said earlier about, you know, the WordPress thing gives you ownership of the data, but if you're promoting an event, you don't want to just do it on a WordPress site. That's where it could be obvious, but Facebook events, Eventbrite, you know, Google Business too, for your business. If you have a business page, you can create events there still, you know, Meetup, etc. So you still want to do all those other things too, cross promote it, but then obviously maybe drive people to your site for the sign up piece of it. So don't forget all, because that's the thing I mentioned to people too. It's like on Facebook is the most shareable, Facebook or Instagram, you know, the kind of social media sites. That's where you want people to say, hey, I'm going, you know, that's where people get the buzz, but drive them back to your site for maybe the ticketing and things like that. So cool. Lots of options. Let's get to Bob's question. Now, Bob, yours isn't about calendars, but it sounds interesting. Subdomains.
Yeah.
How do you get one question for calendars? How did you get the events to list on Google structured? Well, so that's a good point too. So the events calendar data is saved as structured already. So think of it as the Google crawler is going through the site. I believe I'll have to look at it behind the scenes. It may be using a markup that Google will recognize as an event. That other one that Peter showed, the Pi Calendar one, I'm curious about that because it's unstructured in a lot of ways, but it may still recognize that it's an event because of the date time thing. So I'd be curious if those do show up in a Google search. So hopefully that answered. Yep, no problem. All right, Bob, subdomain.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking. So this is a WordPress technical and a marketing question. So I manage a website for the Kiwanis Club of Weston, Connecticut. And we have a fundraiser, our signature fundraiser event we call the Reservoir Run. It's a half marathon and a 5K and a kids fun run. And so we have our own website, and the people that have done the Reservoir Run have used the dedicated runner site that has a lot of functionality for racing, which, you know, would be difficult to match or come close to trying to do it ourselves. but we want to leverage our branding. So for the reservoir, we have our name, westonkiwanis.org, in our club name, but people for the racers who could be members or supporters, we send them to this other website.
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking, I know that there are things called subdomains, and there's a way in in WordPress also. A subdomain I understand would be like adding reservoir run in front of our domain name. Or it could be our domain name / reservoir run. So that's the site from last year. Yep, those are the two sites.
So Bob, is it that you want to give out a URL that has the Kiwanis URL, but then it actually redirects them to the runner's
Yes.
site?
Right. And
Yeah.
so a little background on our website, if you look up in the address bar, you see it's not westonkiwanis.org. So we have a domain, and in January this year, we had a website through another provider that went out that exited the business. But Kiwanis International offers clubs a free website. They have a multi-site license for WordPress.
Yeah.
So we kept our domain name, and I don't know if I'm using the right word. We redirect westonkiwanis.org redirects to this website here. Now the domain was most recently registered by Google, but you may know they left the domain business and is now being handled by Squarespace. But I've selected an option as kiwanis.org.
KNIS.
At the end.
I'm not the first person to do that, right?
Right. Yeah, so
correct. Yep.
So Squarespace is now the registrar, and I've selected the option. So if you go to, say, westonkiwanis.org/join, it goes to, I have that go to the join page here.
Right.
It relays I don't know what you call it.
Yeah. So it's a redirection. So I think your question is around, there's a couple of ways you can redirect. So one way is you can redirect all the way up at the domain level. So never touching your website. You can create redirections at, you said, who is it? Is it Squarespace now or I'm sorry, where is that domain, the Weston Kiwanis?
It's Squarespace.
Yeah, so I don't know, Squarespace just does domains, but yeah, at their level, you can create a redirection rule there to say,
quiet.
The way the domains work is that it first goes to.
Ray's frozen.
Oh, am I okay?
And I want to know what he was going to say. Oh, Ray, you back?
Am I back? I'm sorry. I think I froze. What I was going to say is, normally, if you can create a redirection at the domain level, so wherever all those domain settings are.
Yeah.
Because normally that's where you first go to. That's the first stop before you go to your WordPress website. It goes to the domain, the DNS, basically.
Right.
So that's where you can say, basically, as long as you own the westonkiwanis.org
I do.
domain, yeah, you can have up there, you can create subdomains or whatever and just say, have that thing point to wherever you want, any other website.
And do registrars normally charge for subdomains or that?
No, it's all part of your, it's part of your domain setup.
And so that would be xyz.westonkiwanis.org would be the address.
I've seen that a lot. Like there was a client that I worked with a while ago that they had a subdomain that they wanted to go to they had a sale or something. I forgot what it was. It was kind of like a landing page basically, and they just wanted it to go through that one subdomain. So on the registrar, it was like Black Friday dot whoever, whatever.com goes to someplace else. It didn't go to their normal WordPress site. So you don't ever touch WordPress. So that's one way to do it, all the way up at that level. The other way to do a redirection is on WordPress. If you have that redirection plugin, you can redirect a URL from WordPress to anywhere. It doesn't have to be to another internal WordPress page. So the redirection plugin, let's say you wanted, this would have to be your actual, so Peter, stop jumping around for a second. Can you go to his, the Kiwanis one? So
Yeah, so let me just add right now, I'm interested in what you're saying, but because there are hundreds or maybe thousands of these Kiwanis Club websites, we're not allowed to add plugins.
oh, okay, never mind. Then yes, you'd have to do the other. So just for others, though, another way you would do it is you can do this k07649.site.kiwanis.org/running. You can create a fake URL that basically redirects to anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be your own site. So that'd be another way to do it off of WordPress.
I could do that too without getting a plugin.
You would need a plugin. You would need to install the redirection plugin to do that.
I can't have I can't create a page which actually never displays, it just automatically.
You don't even need to create a page. You can just create a redirection rule, because that's how you get rid of pages too properly. Let's say you wanted to delete a page. Normally in these redirection plugins, you would say, hey, I used to have a page called Contact Us. It doesn't exist anymore. I want people instead to go to my home page. You create that rule using this redirection plugin in WordPress. So it's basically saying whenever someone tries to get to xyz.com/whatever, go here instead. But that's installed at the WordPress level. If you want to do a subdomain, that has to be up at that domain registrar level.
And I would need a plugin to do it at the
WordPress level. Yeah, you let's put it this way, you would want to do with the plugin. There is another way to do it, which is touching files on servers, but you don't want to do your HT-access. You don't want to do that. You'd want a plugin.
Yeah.
So just to clarify for me, at westonkiwanis.org, which goes out to the larger organization, do you actually have a website that already has? I was confused. Are you doing the redirection here through DNS, or do you have a website that gets it first and then sends it to here?
No, we don't have a web. So
No
we had to walk away
Okay.
from the website that with a company that left the business. And what you see is not all my work. There's a Kiwanis International provides templates, and then the clubs can customize them for their individual clubs.
Right.
So this is templated by Kiwanis International.
Yeah. Right. So Ray, then I think the thing is either setting up a website inexpensively somewhere that does nothing but redirect, or go into DNS stuff through the Squarespace domain hosting.
I think you want to do it through the domain hosting, because you don't need to create a website that's there for no reason.
I'll throw something out that I'm completely ignorant about, because I used it once and I couldn't stand it. But everybody talks about Cloudflare, right?
Yeah, Cloudflare is another way to do it too, but that's using a hammer to kill a fly.
Okay, well there you go. I know people swear by it, and I used it once and it slowed everything down to a crawl. But it was a while ago.
Ray, if you want to scroll down on this page, you can see what our calendar looks like. This is a widget coming from Google Calendar.
That looks nice. Yeah, was that the one that you mentioned, Bob?
Yeah.
That was the
Simple.
that was pretty nice.
Simple calendar.
Oh, that's really nice, actually.
Well,
one other kind of obvious thing I didn't say at the beginning context is, for all these events and calendars, these are public events and public calendars, just to remind people, like, if you have private calendars for, let's say,
Yeah.
board members, things like that, don't follow some of these solutions we talked about, because then you introduce a new problem of how do I restrict that? And that's a separate thing. So,
Well, if I can add to that, in simple calendar anyway, you can, as you know, you can have multiple Google calendars.
Yeah.
And in the simple calendar widget controls, for instance, I have see that members page?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I password protect that, and I could have a calendar on there that only the members could get to. That would have only published on the members calendar. Right now, what you see on the sidebar on the right is the public calendar.
Very good.
But thank you for explaining that.
Okay.
I got a couple quick questions in the chat before we wrap up. We had a question about SEO plugins. Ishani asked, free SEO plugin. I threw out SEO Press, the free versions, the one I use. Peter has a different one.
Yeah, I use Slim SEO.
Slim SEO.
Slim SEO because I don't like
SEO.
Yeah. I don't know what letters I just wrote. SEO. I like Slim SEO. There is because it basically gives me just what I need. I want control over the description. I want control over the meta title description. It does schema, those types of things. But you will hear that people swear by Yoast or Rank Math.
SEO Press, I'm not sure if you've used it much, but that to me, it's the same kind of, it's pretty slim. And Shani, we're probably going to do one on SEO in the near future too. So if you want to look at, we'll go into in more depth of what to see from those. A couple other quick ones to wrap up. So Raymond Hill, Peter had mentioned actually that plugin seemed to not work with his version of, this is the color category one, seemed to not work with his version of WordPress. So just FYI on that. He's using 6.5.2. And then LaDonna had one about recommend Amelia for booking calendaring. I've never heard of that one, Amelia for booking.
So let's see if I have it. This is what Amelia looks like on the front end, where it is pulling in my Google Calendar data, tied into Google Calendar, and then you can set up to book time. It can be made to have, give me the information. I can have people pay money for it. You go through it. So this is where we're talking a little bit about
bookings and appointments.
Right.
Was that one free or was that one paid?
That was paid, but I'm not sure. I got it on an AppSumo deal. It's one of the few that is still going strong. Amelia.
What's Calendly was the other one that I've used before.
Yeah.
That one had a free version. I'm not sure if that's still free or not. So
I think so, because I know folks who use this, but let's see, there is a always free one event type, one unlimited meeting. So, and I know some folks who use this, they put out a calendar. It's very similar, but there's no bells or whistles to it. It's basically book some time. When you get into more advanced, you get into the payments and adding all the other people and categories of things. And, they use the example of, booking a haircut, for example.
You can do, so I think that could be a good one. LaDonna, that could be a good one too, that we can cover at a separate one, bookings and appointments. Because I think I have a lot to learn on that too. I think there's some WordPress things, but then there's all this. I think this kind of shows a good example of once you start getting into a system around managing things, then WordPress itself may just be a front end face to that system, but all the real guts are behind the scenes.
Yeah,
so we have a couple more on. Okay, so we'll definitely do that one.
Very good.
The last minute ones, we ran over a little bit, but hopefully the idea of this series makes sense to people too, that we want to kind of do a deep dive on something like, so SEO, for example, we'll pick one of them, whatever, pick something besides Yoast, and we'll do a series and look at that, and something else for caching and all that kind of stuff. So All right, cool.
Yeah, it looks like there's some interest in some booking stuff. So very good.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks again, folks, for hanging with us a couple minutes late, and hope to see you all again next month. And any other ideas for topics and stuff, feel free to send them to Peter or myself. I'll send out the recording sometime tomorrow with some of the links that we had. Again, any questions, anything, reach out to Peter or myself anytime. We're on the Facebook group all the time. So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day/night. Take care.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.